part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Good day, everybody, and welcome to the Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I am your host, Scott Sabol.
And I'm the other host here, John Sabol. How's it going out there?
John, it's really cool. The guest we have lined up today is somebody we've been trying to get for a long time, and our schedules have just not synced up. But we finally got this guest. He's a special. He's really a special person, especially for you, because you met this individual quite a few years ago, and you've kept in touch with him. And he can kind of give us hopefully some insight, not only on the Browns, but maybe a kind of a special connection to Cleveland.
Our guest today is CBS Sports anchor, voice of the Masters, NFL, college basketball, Jim Nantz. And I've known Jim going on almost 15 years. Actually, it's been 13 years, I believe. So we're getting to that point of 15 years.
Yeah,
I met Jim years ago at a golf tournament, a PGA tournament in West Virginia when I worked there. And I was right out of college, first job, got to meet him. And, you know, I've interviewed many professional athletes, some big name guys over the years, Shaq, LeBron, Tiger Woods, Derek Jeter, you name it. And I don't ever get starstruck when I've interviewed guys. And Jim Nantz, when I was young, right out of school, was a guy that I was a little starstruck with, a little nervous, because he's in our field. He's in TV. He's a sports broadcaster. And the minute I met him, that kind of nerves years ago went away, because he was just a genuinely nice guy. The guy that you see on TV that's how he is. And he just makes you feel like you've known the guy for years. And it's been a while since we've exchanged emails over the years. He's helped me out a lot in my career, and gave me a lot of tips, a good mentor, Scott. And I'm really excited to talk to him and just to catch up, really. You know, it's like that long lost friend or relative you haven't seen in a long time. That's how it is for me. So I'm really excited, and I'm curious to hear what he has to say about the Browns and the NFL.
About the Browns and kind of, you know, his preparation on a lot of these games. I mean, he's been doing it a long time. A lot of people could mail it in. And I have a feeling he's a guy that doesn't, quote unquote, mail it in. You know, he still prepares games, I'm sure, just like he did in the past. And we'll talk with him about that. And we'll talk about his Cleveland connection as well.
All that and much more coming up right after this.
Hey, I'm Jason.
And I'm Gary, and we love ball cards.
And if you love ball cards too, good news. You just found your new favorite podcast. From breaks to grading.
And from collecting to flipping, join us on the Ball Card Show.
The sports podcast for the sports collector.
The R&R podcast going to be rocking and rolling with you because football season is underway. College, Ohio State, the Power Fives, the MAC, the Browns. Michael Regai, are you ready to rock and roll with some football?
Kenny, I've been ready. This is our time of year. This is what R&R is all about. We're going to be with you every week. Kenny just said it. Browns, NFL, Ohio State centric. So you got to stay with us all fall and winter long here on R&R.
That's right. The Regai and Rhoda podcast coming to you here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Subscribe now and don't miss a show.
I'm Holly Wetzel.
And I'm Jeremy Powell.
And we are your hosts of The Orange is Oranger, a Cleveland Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network. We give you all the dog pound coverage that you'll need each week to get you ready for kickoff and beyond.
Don't miss our breakdowns of each week's matchups, game recaps, and any and all news out of Berea to feed your Browns appetite. As we all know, Holly, dogs got to eat.
That's right, Jeremy. Hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode of The Orange is Oranger Browns podcast on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Welcome back to Sabol Brothers on the Baseline podcast, right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. Our next guest is a special one and, well, means a lot to me, a good friend and a mentor in my television career. And of course, all you listeners out there will know his voice and his face on TV on the CBS Sports broadcasts of the NFL golf. You remember he's the voice of the Masters, the March Madness Final Four, and the Super Bowl when it's on CBS. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott and I want to welcome in Jim Nantz to the pod. Hey, Jim, how you doing?
Hello, friends and brothers alike. It's good to be with you both. We've been trying to set this up for a long time, but to get 3 schedules together, it's not always the easiest thing. So consider me to be, I guess, the older brother here for just a few minutes. I'll take my name this weekend. Jim Sabol and Tony Romo here in the booth at Soldier Field.
So you're broadcasting from Chicago. That's going to be a fun game.
Yep. How are the Sabol Brothers? What is going on with you guys?
Doing pretty well. For me personally, and with my family, my son is playing college. Hopefully, he wants to play in college, high school football, and they're doing the Region 1 finals coming up here on Friday. That was one of the reasons why I couldn't schedule with you guys with the podcast on Saturday, because their games kind of interfered with that. And Medina is doing very well. If they win against St. Ed's on Friday, they'll play Region 2, which is a team out of Toledo. So we got a great team, a stud quarterback, Drew Aller, which was also on our podcast. So we've been really busy with sports here, and also kind of, busy with looking at snowflakes fly and the weather changing as it's getting a lot colder.
Well, Scott, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've known your brother for a long time because he used to be a great sports anchor down in West Virginia near the Greenbrier, where we had the pleasure of broadcasting that tournament. And he was always super kind to me and always came by the booth and got to spend some time together in the booth before we'd come on the air. And I kind of watched his whole thing evolve. I think it's cool that you two are teaming up to do something fun like this. And I can only imagine how proud that makes your parents that you guys are kind of sitting back as brothers and fans of all things that come out of Ohio. And I know you've had a great list of guests on your show, and I'm just honored again to be on with you both.
Well, Jim, we really appreciate you coming on, and thank you so much. And you mentioned those Greenbrier years, and real quick, before we talk about football, I kind of want to let our listeners know our history real quick. I met you in the inaugural Greenbrier Classic in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, PGA tournament there, which is actually no longer a tournament, unfortunately. That was in 2009. That was my first TV job working at the CBS affiliate in Beckley, West Virginia. And I was there, that was like my first year. And I was, when we had the opportunity, my buddy, Tim Carrico, who worked there with me, and I was just texting him today saying, hey, I'm going to talk to Jim. He says hi, by the way. When we had the opportunity to come up in the tower and do a one-on-one with you and sit there at the tower, which was an amazing experience, got to meet Nick Faldo, got to meet your wife, Courtney, at the time. I think you guys were engaged. And man, it was an awesome experience. And real quick, I don't know if you remember this. And one of my favorite memories of working in West Virginia was the Greenbrier Classic days and with you. And Tim Carrico reminded me of this moment. And I wanted to ask you about this. Do you remember in that tower, when you were getting the countdown for 60 seconds, 30, you pointed to me in the corner of the booth and said, come here, and gave me a pad of paper. And you said, John, write my intro out of the break. Do you remember that?
Actually, it was the opening scene set to the show. I wanted you to kind of give me some proper descriptive words that would frame what this tournament meant to the great state of West Virginia and to the surrounding areas. And I gave you about a 45-second warning to cobble together a couple of sentences. And, you got to pay it off, John. What did I do?
You read it word for word. I don't know how you read my chicken scratch because I was so nervous and quickly jotting down on your pad, and you read it. And I think the scene was they had video over like a not drone video, but I guess it was just B-roll over the course fading into you guys in the booth. And then you took your glasses off and then winked at me and gave me a air high five, thinking it was great. And Jim, I got to say, man, that was one of the most proud moments of my career at such a young age. Awesome. And I still remember that, obviously. And I just can't thank you enough for that. And also all the help that you've given me in my career, tips and pointers and all that good stuff.
Well, you're a good man, and you're, I'm always believed in you. And it's easy to recognize people that are good folks, treat people right, and have talent on top of it. And that's you. So very proud of you, and excited truly to be on on your pod, and especially since you got the two of you together. So let's have at it. Let's talk about all things Cleveland Browns. It sounds like that's what you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, it's the big topic of conversation in Cleveland. I just got back here last night and been, keeping tabs on the Browns, as Scott has too. We all have. We enter this pod here. The Browns are 5-5, Jim, coming off one of the worst losses since coming back in the league in '99. I know you weren't on that call, but give me your first reaction to that loss, especially after what they did to the Bengals the week before, a game that you did call.
It's hard to figure out the NFL these days. Everything runs so hot and cold. The Browns are perhaps the best example of it. I had them 2 straight weeks. They should have beaten. That's not my stomach growling, by the way. That's my dog. Okay.
That's all right. No problem.
No problem.
Ramsey, we're on the air right now. Sit.
What kind of dog, Jim?
It's a golden double doodle. And if I look at him, he's going to think I'm going to feed him.
I've got a golden retriever at home here, actually.
They do. Yeah. Sorry, guys. Can you edit this?
You know what? I love the gnat sound there of the dog whining because he or she wants attention. So it's all good.
Yeah, my dog's up here looking out the window, and there was a black cat running down the street. So who knows what's going to happen here in a few seconds.
We might have a whole chorus here in a minute. No, I think the Browns have a lot of things they've had to try to overcome. And last week with Nick Chubb being out for the game, Kareem Hunt not back. And we know that, listen, Dearness put up good numbers again. He did fine, but it just, I think emotionally, the edge going into the game, it was already feeling to me a little bit off when the news was coming out that a couple of guys were not going to make it for that game. It's still hard to explain, particularly after that first drive of the game. Mm-hmm. When they went down the field, and I thought, wow, and they made the gutsy 4th down play, and Hooper caught in the back of the end zone. I don't know. I know what everybody's expectations for this team was to be better than 5-5, but it's a wacky year in the league. Mm-hmm. And, a year ago at that very time, I want to say it's about the same time, I had Cleveland at Pittsburgh last year, regular season. Mm-hmm. And if I'm not mistaken, that was 38-7. And if you would have told me at that time that this team's going to come back, win a game in the playoffs in this very stadium where they just got shellacked, I wouldn't have believed it. So you can't give up on them. They're in a great division. There's still so much of the season to go. And that one's just one they have to forget about. I think we're in the twilight zone right now for the NFL with results like Jets over Cincinnati, Washington over Tampa, Jacksonville over Buffalo, Denver blowing out Dallas in Dallas. And there are others. It's just Miami over Baltimore. What is going on here? Suddenly the bottom feeders, they have a voice in this game, and there are just no weeks off. It's just simply, there are no walkovers anymore. And that was a bad week to not play your best when you're going against a Bill Belichick coach team. But you know what? This team has to move on, and I believe it will, and figure it out.
There's so much anticipation here in Cleveland on this season. I mean, I remember when the Browns were good back in the 80s and early 90s when Marty Schottenheimer was the coach, and at the beginning of Bill Belichick's coaching career. I mean, you could feel it here, and it reminds me of how it was when I was growing up. It just sounds like, Jim, at least from what I'm gathering, you're not all that surprised that the team is a little up and down like this, but it's more of an indication of how the league is going, it seems, versus the team itself, right?
It's true, Scott. I think that the league is so balanced right now that you cannot have lasting power as a top flight team for seems like much more than a week or two. Tennessee's on top of the heap right now. Now I'm talking in the AFC conference, and they've had 2 impressive wins since losing Derrick Henry, winning at the Rams and then winning again this last week against New Orleans. But 3 months from now, when the Super Bowl is being played, 3 months from now, are they still going to be the best team? I don't know. That seems like a bit of a stretch to assume that. Or are they the best team in the AFC? They're the current number 1 seed. Baltimore was sitting on top of the standings on the AFC side, and they went down to Miami. Who would have imagined Miami could put up a game plan like that? The best game plan anybody's ever put up against Lamar, by the way. Mm-hmm. So it changes like that. Kansas City was looking dead and gone and not going to be the same team. They bounced back with some wins. New England has won 4 in a row. How do you figure this out? I don't know, but you have to realize with 17 games, what's it going to take to get in the playoffs? I think 9-8 is going to get in. I think there's a couple of teams at 9-8, but 9-8 gets you in. And I know this team had a lot more to hope for than being the number 7 seed. And I'm not saying that's the best they can do by any capacity, but let's let this thing play out. Let's see Kareem Hunt come back. I think that's a big absence for them. Let's somehow see if Baker can get a little healthier. Chubb, we know, is coming back. Let's see where this team goes. I think they're pretty darn good. I saw that in the game in Cincinnati 2 weeks ago.
So with their struggles, can you pinpoint one reason or why or who's to blame for the inconsistent play? Is it just a collective of coaching, Baker, injuries, and the wackiness of the current NFL?
I think they ran into a buzzsaw last week, John. I think they were going against a team that was hot, that had won 3 straight coming in. And, Baker was beat up. He got hurt again in that game. And I think just the mental wear and tear of knowing another significant player was going to be out, that being Nick Chubb. I just think it was once it started going in the wrong direction, they couldn't pull themselves out of it. I say dismiss it, move on. That is not who they are. They're not going to lose 45-7 every week by any means. In fact, they're going to win more games like that, I think, on their side of the equation before the season's over.
So besides Baker Mayfield's injuries, do you think he's regressing at all? I know it's kind of hard to separate injuries from just talent when healthy, but do you think he's maybe come back a couple of steps, or do you think it's more injury related?
Again, it's one of those things. When do you ask me this? Because last week, and I'm talking about in Cincinnati, he looked pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to evaluate him right now off of what he did the next week. Come back to me after this week's game, and maybe it's a different story. So I know he's playing with some very, very significant injuries. I mean, the fracture on the shoulder is not something that's any small injury. And then, of course, the separation too, to have that harness on. And then last week to even now have injuries in another area. It's a lot. It's a lot. So I'm not going to say he's regressing by any means.
Do you think the Browns should extend him now with his contract situation?
That's a hard thing to evaluate. Again, I have to say, Scott, I'm not one of these guys that honestly feels like I'm qualified to give you a hot take on whether a guy should be extended or not. Nobody cares what my opinion is. Right. And for example, the Browns aren't going to say, Jim Nantz said that they should extend. So I stay in my lane on deals like that. I know it's a big decision to come up for this franchise. And look, their roster is pretty good. I mean, it's top to bottom, great offensive line. The running back room, when healthy, is one of the best, if not the best in the league. I mean, they've got a lot of things going for them. Myles Garrett, a secondary, and I said this on the radio in Cleveland before they played Cincinnati, and that was that I think if the secondary, if everybody's up, it's the best secondary maybe in football if everybody's healthy. And what did they do? Boom, Denzel makes a pick and goes 99 yards in the first series of the game. So I think there's a lot there about the Browns that is a positive. So let's not live week to week on this thing and think that last week's a reflection of who they are.
So it still sounds like, Jim, even if you think they go 9-8, that could still squeak into the playoffs. I
would expect it would. Yeah, I do, John. I think 9-8 is going to be right there. It's going to be interesting that tie for the Steelers. Which side are they going to end up on? Because I have a feeling they're going to be right there with them. Will that half a game at, perhaps 8-1 or 9-7-1? Which side of the playoff bubble will that half a game help them or hurt them? It's interesting because that division is murderer's row. I mean, when you take those 4 teams, I mean, we're not even discussing Cincinnati right now because they've lost 2 in a row. But let's not forget that before that, they were 5-2, and through 7 weeks, they were the number 1 seed in the whole AFC. So, Cincinnati is going to be right there. We know Baltimore will be. Pittsburgh's probably better than we thought they were going to be. And the Browns, are right there with them as well. So I say it. Not everybody on my crew, I'm not going to name any names. Not everybody on my crew believes this. I think it's the best division in football. That's not necessarily a good thing for the Browns faithful, but I think top to bottom, it's the most balanced and the hardest division to win.
Aside from the teams you mentioned there, what about the NFC? Any teams right now, at least on paper, that you think are built to continue to get deep into the playoffs?
Well, as we sit here and do this pod right now, there is a similar pod taking place in Tampa and one in Ramsland, where people are saying, what's wrong with our team?
Yeah.
We stink. I thought this was our year, because the Bucs have lost a couple of games wrapped around a bye week. I mean, losing at Washington, hello? I mean, does that make sense? And then the Rams to put up 2 stinkers in a row. Mm-hmm. I would have thought that the Rams might, by this point, start some separation. But here's, Arizona. We know they didn't have Kyler Murray, but, they lost to Green Bay, and this last week they got thumped pretty good. So, man, I know it's easy to say that this year's the craziest year I've ever seen, but I can specifically say that I don't think there's ever been a year quite like this where the unexpected has happened on such a regular basis, particularly these last 3 weeks.
So, Jim, I don't know if you're aware of this. Maybe you are, but I went back and did some digging. Do you know that you are the Browns are 3-14 when you're calling Browns games dating back to 2004?
I've had some people point out that we hadn't seen a Browns win in quite some time. I am aware of that. And I think a lot of people were rejoicing that the Nantz Romo jinx was over after Cincinnati, because we definitely were hearing some of that. Did you hear that too? Scott, come on, now fess up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, as I said to my friend Tony Gross, okay, fine. If you guys don't want us to do the games anymore, then you're ruling out the Browns being in the AFC Championship game for X number of years, because Tony and I are going to be calling that game for at least the next decade. So if you don't want us to do your games, then you're limiting how far the Browns can go. So get over it. They'll figure out a way to win when we're up in the booth. Like that has something to do with anything. But the overall record, no. John, I wasn't aware of that. Now, that's since what year, 2004?
And I believe your first Browns game was 91 against the Patriots? That sound about right at the old stadium?
Oh, I know you're on to it. What it is my first Browns game. No. I did a Browns game in 1988 against, I think it was Dallas, and I did the game with Kenny Stabler. Remember, we had the NFC back in those days. You boys weren't even born yet. So at the old Cleveland Municipal Stadium. But what you're on here is that Bill Belichick's first game.
That's what it
as
was.
a head coach in any capacity for any team was in September of 1991, and it was Dallas against Cleveland. I called Belichick's first game.
That's what it was. That's crazy. Yeah, the Browns. The Browns.
I had some wins back in the 90s, by the way. I'm not getting credit for those. I'm not getting credits for some of those wins, including on CBS Radio. I had a lot of wins. So,
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, the Browns snapped that 9-game losing streak with you as the announcer against the Bengals game 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So that was good.
It was a great relief for me.
Now, for those who don't,
I have a lot of family up there. You guys aren't the only ones that are Ohioans. My in-laws up that way. So they keep me apprised of all the chatter that's out there, and they were into this Hex thing also. So we can put it into that.
You were just I was just alluding to that. For people that don't know, you married a Cleveland girl, so I'm sure your in-laws and her family are aware of your little Browns jinx, right?
Oh yeah. They are diehards. I can tell you two are diehards. You know what? The fan base in Cleveland. It's hard to say that one's the greatest because I've got to go to all the cities. But if you can find a fan base that is more loyal or rabid than the Browns fans, please introduce them to me. Now, I think there's some that are on the same level, and there's a whole lot of teams that aren't on that level that are below that. But there's no one that has more loyal, dedicated, rabid, bloodthirsty, hungry, obsessed fans than the Browns nation. And I love that. I respect that. I think it's a reflection too of the community. I think it's a very proud city. Obviously I've gotten to know it well. My in-laws, as you mentioned, John, are there. I've spent a lot of time in the area, either doing games or golf tournaments down where Scott is and the Akron area. Excuse me. And I love loyalty is one of the great traits of all time. Loyalty, if you're a fan or if you're loyal to your family, loyal to your spouse, to me, that is, that's essential. And that's what I see of the Cleveland Browns fans. They're loyal through thick and thin, and that's commendable.
So you mentioned you have family here. Do you have a favorite place to eat when you come back to town here?
Well, I'll start out down where you are. Okay. I'm going to go slide over to Akron and go to the Diamond Grill. Right? I mean,
excellent.
Now, right?
Can't go wrong there.
Can't go wrong there. I call it a tradition unlike any other. And then up in Cleveland, you got to realize that when we're in Cleveland, I spend a lot of time eating at home or at the home of my in-laws. So, the cousins come running over to play with one another. So it's not like we're going out all the time. For lunch, you might find me at Corky and Lenny's.
Excellent.
That's an excellent spot. You might find me, if we had a night out, I might be at one of Zach Brule's restaurants. I like those. Parallax, had some good meals there, and the Alley Cat. Colin Hubbard. What is that? I can't think of the other name, but it's been there a couple of times out in the suburbs. That's one of Zach's restaurants. So
that's a good list.
Yeah, Cleveland's got an underrated.
Albatross. I just had my Cleveland connection come through for me.
There you go.
There you go.
Cleveland's got a very underrated food scene. That's for sure.
Oh, you know what? Cleveland's underrated overall. Vastly underrated. I mean, forget. I've already said and talked about the people. Okay, the people are extraordinary. But take just the city itself. You're right. The restaurant scene is underrated. The museum district is sensational. The arts, the downtown life is definitely with the Indian Stadium, the Q, and of course the Cleveland Browns Stadium, and that's not what we call it these days. The Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the hotels are better, even though I don't stay in them anymore. Golf. The golf courses and the clubs there are vastly underrated. So for some reason, Cleveland became the butt of a lot of jokes for people from outside the area a long time ago. And I don't know how you rid yourself of it. It's too bad, but it's just people that aren't aware of what Cleveland has to offer. Spend some time there and you'll see it's one of the great cities in America.
Well said. Yeah, absolutely. Jim, last question before we let you go. Wanted to ask you this because I know a lot of our listeners who watch you on the CBS broadcasts with the golf, March Madness, and the NFL. And I think I've asked you this question before in our meetings years ago, but for those that don't know, or maybe you can shed some light on, what is your favorite event a year that you broadcast other than the Masters? Because I know that's what you were going to say.
You know me too well, John. You know me too well because that is deep in my heart. And I've kind of framed my career about that event. That's what was the tug to get me into the business. And I know as far as longevity, I would like that to exist in my life all the way to the 100th playing of the Masters, which would be 15 years out from now. I've broadcast 36 of them. I want to do 51 when it's all said and done. That'll be the 100th playing of the Masters, and I'd like to be there to see that landmark event. That's the goal. But after that, I mean, my goodness, I have 3 children. Which one's my favorite? Which one do I love the most? That's what you're basically asking me. That's
correct. Yeah, correct.
Do you guys have any other siblings?
3 sisters. I'm the oldest.
And I'm the youngest.
I'm 47. John's 12 years younger than me. And then we have 3 sisters in the middle.
So this is perfect. You set me up perfectly, Scott. So I have the three primary events, and I have three children. Okay. So I have college basketball, the NFL, and golf. Which one of my children do I love the most? I can't answer that. Which one of your sisters do you love the most? Put it on the record right now, Scott.
I can hit stop recording right now, Jim, and us three could have a nice conversation about
that. You see what I'm saying? But hey, recall the NCAA tournament in the Final Four. It's pretty sweet. The Super Bowl is just the biggest event in America. It's indisputable. The television audience, it basically captures almost our entire population base. You feel the weight of that for months leading up to it that you're going to call it. I broadcast 8 of them. So, week in and week out, I just enjoy the NFL games. Seeing a stadium come to life, preparing for a game. We're talking here, and I know I seem distracted at times. I'm putting a board together, working on my assignment for this weekend. I love the process. It's not just the game; it's getting ready for the game. So I guess I'm wavering here, but I love it all.
So, Jim, I know we're getting kind of deep in the weeds about what we do in broadcasting and what you do, but has the process changed in your preparation for a sporting event compared to say what it was 15, 20 years ago, or is it pretty much the same?
I work at it just as hard. Now, the thing that has changed is technology, and I have the access on the internet to find all the articles on my own. It didn't used to be that way. I mean, that sounds like a dinosaur, but I still do all of my prep and all my board work by hand. Nobody does it for me. It's all color coded. I read every clip. I work all week long on trying to be prepared for a 3-hour window. And I respect anybody that does. I don't computerize it. I don't have somebody else do my work for me. I'm old school in that. And I think that's the way it has to be done. So it's just you have access to a lot more information than used to. I think that's the biggest difference, Scott.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jim, you're the best to do it out there right now. I'm a little biased, but I truly believe that. So,
you know what we're going to do next time? Here's what we're going to do. Just to bring full symmetry back to what year would that have been? You said 2009, right? At the Greenbrier?
Correct.
Next time, I want you to remember this. The next time I get a Browns home game, I want you to write me a sentence. Scene set of downtown Cleveland as the camera pans over to the stadium, and now the title card comes up, and today's matchup is. But I'm going to give you that little piece of real estate with the ability to tweak it just a little bit if I need to. But I'm going to have you be able to say you're the only person to ever write my open for a golf event and the opening line for one of my football games. And if you want to bring Scott in to get an associate writer's credit, it's okay with me.
Jim,
Excellent.
I would love that opportunity, and it would be an honor to relive those writing days. That would be great. You just got to let me know when those announcements come out. Just email me when you have an idea of what the next Browns game you're going to be doing. I would love to do that.
Yeah, I know it right now. We need them to keep winning. We need them to get back on the winning train. But our schedule is updated every couple of weeks. So in the short term, I don't have them. Mm-hmm. But in the long term, I expect to. And I cannot wait to hear that poetry coming from you. Through me, I will channel you and I'll go up with it nationally.
I wouldn't call my writing poetic, but I think you make it poetic. So that's
you can start working on it now. Listen, this is going to be about Cleveland hosting today. I need a shot of the skyscrapers, the downtown shot it's 10 seconds.
Yeah.
10 seconds. You don't have to do it right now, but it's going to be, unless they're changing the skyline of Cleveland between now and December or next year, when I have that next Cleveland home game, you can start working on it right now.
I'll do that. Jim, I just want to say it's been great to catch up with you. I know you and I have exchanged emails over the last few years and recently. I'm so happy that we got a chance to catch up and for you to meet my brother and be on the pod, talk Browns football. It's been awesome.
Jim, well, I can hear it in your voice, both of you. I caught you on a bad week. I can hear the frustration. I hear a lot of should Baker be re-upped and it's the sky is falling. I'm hearing it in your voices, guys. Okay. I wish we would have done this last week after the Cincinnati game, and you guys would have been asking me if the Browns are going to the Super Bowl.
Right. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
It's week to week.
Yeah. We're from Cleveland. You can't blame us. Like
I told you, my family is the exact same way. And, I'll say to you even more personal ties within the family to that organization for the next time. We call that a T. My father-in-law. We're gonna put out a full Ohio search for his father. Okay, my father-in-law was adopted.
Oh, okay.
As a baby.
Ooh, this is intriguing.
He believes he was told his father played for the Cleveland Browns.
Really?
Wow. That's one of the greatest teases in broadcasting or pod history right there.
Definitely in ours. And we've only been doing this since July.
Yeah, right.
We'll explore that the next time.
Yeah. We'll catch up again and do that.
My grandfather-in-law, I guess is what it would be. Okay. Through your show.
That'd be great. I'm writing it down right now. Next time.
Former Cleveland Brown. Supposedly. And if you saw my father-in-law, there would be no doubt that his biological father was a football player. He's a big, strong, built like an offensive tackle, which he was for 3 years at the University of Pittsburgh, starting left tackle. There's no question that there's some great athlete DNA that George is a byproduct of. So we're going to find he's had a lifelong search to find his father.
We'll be honored to help with that search.
We'll make this a national story. We're gonna find his biological father, who he was, and it would be a dream come true. I'm totally serious. It would be a dream come true for the family. Mm-hmm. Now you get an idea why the Browns is such a personal point of pride within my family.
Wow, that is an incredible story. I can't wait to go in depth and dig deep into that, because we know, or at least I know, Jim, your connection with your father. You wrote a book about him more than 10 years ago about his struggles with Alzheimer's. You had a great connection with your dad. I can only imagine the connection with your father-in-law and your wife. And you gave me a signed copy of that book and wrote "Go Browns." And that's an interesting tie-in to how much the fathers, the dads, and our dad is still alive. And our dad's a huge Browns fan. And Scott and I are both dads, and we're big Browns fans. So it's, I guess what I'm saying is everything right here, it seems like it's coming full circle in a way.
You captured it perfectly, my friend. And that's what the Browns are. They're a part of the community. They're part of the life. And everybody that is in that community has ownership in that franchise. And that's why it gets back to why I talked about there's no fan base that's more invested. They are a part of who you are. And in the case of my father-in-law, it's believed that it is truly a part of his background.
Wow.
And so the connection runs deep for everyone, all of us. And I wish you guys well. Don't give up on this team. I think that they've got a lot of big positives in this season. It could change like that. And it could be a month from now, they could be sitting on top of the world, and they have enough ability, and they got a great coach. I think they could just get the injury thing cleaned up a little bit, that a lot of good things can happen.
Jim, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. My brother said a lot of good things about you over the years, and I'm glad that you could join us in the podcast, and hopefully we can talk pretty soon.
I look forward to it. John, I'm proud of you, brother. Okay.
Thank you so much, Jim. It's awesome to talk
Happy
to you and see you.
Everybody. Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving to your family as well. We'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Best. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
John, that was really fun. You know, his time is very limited because he's preparing, as we just heard, for games. He's got all these different things going on, and he spends all day. And for him to take just a few minutes, much less almost a half hour, talking with us about the Browns. And what struck me is his Cleveland connection, but the fact that he has, what was it? His grandfather-in-law. Is that what he said?
That's what it sounds like. Yeah. His father-in-law adopted, but his grandfather-in-law
played for the Browns, and they're trying to, as a family project, they're trying to find the connection there. That's really cool because I did a bunch of family tree research over the years. And when you find those connections, it's like, whoa, that's really cool. And for him, being, a national voice like this, and he does so many games, but Cleveland has a special place in his heart. That's really neat to see and hear.
That was unsolicited. I had no idea he was going to bring that up. Nope. I didn't know about that. Of course, I know his wife is from Cleveland. Right. So we know just from listening to that, his impact of the Browns and the city and the area, how much it means to him personally. And he's been here for decades, going to the Firestone golf tournament when it was down in Akron. When he said that, Scott, I immediately thought of you because you're a big fan of history as I am, but you really love the family tree stuff. And you did our family tree project dating back to, decades and decades and decades ago on our side. So I instantly thought of you. And it's funny. I looked at you here on the Zoom call. You guys out there listening can't see it, but your eyes lit up and you're like,
I'm like, ooh, that's kind of cool.
Right up your alley. So, that could be something really that we could, really talk with him about more, as he alluded to in a next episode down the road. But you know what? It goes to show, as a national guy as he is in the media and has touched so many people just through sports, how much he loves the area and loves the team and knows and appreciates the history of the team and the fandom here. And I liked his message too, Scott, about the Browns. He makes me feel a little bit better after that dismal performance last week in New England, that he's not ready to give up on them.
No, he's not ready to give up on a lot of teams as well. I mean, the NFL's all over the place. A lot of Jekyll and Hyde type games over the last several weeks. And, I think he hit the nail on the head, given the balance in the NFL and the way that the last several weeks have gone. You could see a team go 9-8, make the playoffs. We've seen teams sub 500 make the playoffs before in the past. I know that. But this year, because we have, with the league set up, with so much offense versus what it was, 15, 20 years ago, a 9-8 might do it.
And it would be crazy if it did, for a lot of reasons, because of it's uncharacteristically ways of getting into the playoffs. Plus, you never see a 9-8 team because of the extra game. So that's odd too.
Right.
But you see these teams that have so much talent like the Browns, and they just haven't been able to get it together. Injuries are a big part of it. And of course, the inconsistent play of Baker Mayfield. And even though I know he is injured, I'm still a little leery on, whatever he's going through mentally and trying to get over this hump. Maybe it's more mentally than it is physical. I don't know. I'm not him. It could be both. It's a perfect storm right now for the Browns to be dealing all this kind of stuff. And Jim kind of alluded to all that too.
And the Browns are playing Detroit. Again, I know it's Detroit and the Browns are favored by 10. And they also have their off week coming up after that. So hopefully we get a win and then we get the off week and then we go into the final however many weeks, with a little more strength, and hopefully the up and down pattern doesn't continue as we finish out. So yeah, it was great talking to Jim. I'm glad I had a chance to meet with him. You've talked so much about him over the years, and I'm glad I had a chance to meet him here through the podcast. He was just a great guy.
Excellent guy. Browns play the Ravens next week, Scott, then the off week. And then they got
Ravens. That's right. I'm sorry. You're correct.
But then they've got that weird scheduling quirk where they play the Ravens again after the bye week.
Right.
That's so odd.
That is very odd. So
weird. Yeah. But back to your point though. I mean, Jim is such a great guy. Like I said, Scott, I think you just kind of felt it too. Like he is a normal guy that, he's in this big role in media and in sports, but he's just a guy you can sit down and have a beer with and talk and feel like you've known him forever. I don't know if you felt that way, but he's just a genuinely nice guy. He's done a lot for me personally in my career. And I love his insight. And you're right. He didn't have to take that much time to talk to us. And he's in Chicago right now, gearing up for that Bears game this weekend. And and I think they actually play the Ravens, believe it or not. So it's funny how that kind of went full circle. So
we'll have him on the podcast again. I guarantee you.
Absolutely. And we want to thank Jim Nantz once again for coming on our podcast here, Sabol Brothers on the Baseline, right here on the Press Play Podcast Network. We're going to wrap this thing up, but before we do, we want to let you know out there, if you haven't already, if you want to get in touch with us on social media, do so. You can tweet at both of us at my Twitter handle at John_Sabol, or if you want to get with us through the pod, and we upload and tweet clips from our pod, as well as teasers to next pods and current pods, and that's at Sabol Brothers.
And my Twitter handle is my name, Scott Sabol, FOX8. So you can send me a message, and hey, suggestions are always welcome.
And if you haven't already, click that subscribe button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you don't have access to those two platforms, feel free to go on the Press Play Podcast website. We have a catalog of all of our podcast episodes listed there for your listening pleasure.
Play it right off the computer at work.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.